Hello, 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 everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, the Flight Sim community. This is Fireshark 95, and today, everyone, we're here in beautiful Alaska today. That's right, guys. We're in the last frontier today of the United States. I hope you're all doing well here today. On this Sunday morning. I hope you guys have had a great weekend so far. So this is part 49 of 50. Yes, we're only just 2 states left in this entire journey, and we're visiting second to last state of this trip. So of course, if you guys aren't aware about Alaska, you probably know it as one of the most interesting and remote states in the country. You know it as for wildernesses, glaciers, mountains, and some and of course its natural beauty. There's more to Alaska than just that too, and we'll learn more about it as we explore the state. Before I want to get started, I do want to say hello to everyone here and hello to all the lurkers and stuff. Good to have you guys here on board. So here's our nav map for today's flight. So we'll start in Ketchikan for International Airport. We'll fly around to downtown Ketchikan for a quick fly around of the city. Then from there, we're going to head up north. We're going to go past here. And we're going to head up all the way to Wrangell for our first stop here in Wrangell, Alaska. Papa Alpha Whiskey Golf here in beautiful Wrangell. Then from there, we'll be flying west, and we'll visit Alaska's first state capital in beautiful Sitka. We'll learn more about that. And finally, from there, we'll head up northeast, and we reach the current state capital of Alaska in beautiful Juneau. We'll fly around to Juneau, and we'll make our way to Juneau International Airport, just outside of Juneau, right near Mendenhall Glacier. So it should be a gorgeous flight over the Inside Passage, which should be an absolutely gorgeous trip. And I hope you guys enjoy this because I really do like flying around the Inside Passage of Alaska. So our plane today, we're going to take the de Havilland DHC-2 Beaver. And I've taken this plane because this is a very popular plane for those who fly in Alaska. This is a very popular plane for that. So that's why we're taking the beautiful Beaver today. So very capable bush aircraft, very popular, especially around British Columbia and Alaska. You'll probably see plenty of these during your time up in this part of Alaska. So that's where we're going to fly today. So we're going to be taking off here from Ketchikan International Airport. Just let me get this plane started. Thankfully, she should be a pretty easy plane to get started. Thankfully, she should be a pretty easy plane to get up and going. The Beaver is a pretty easy plane. So we're flying out of Ketchikan International Airport today. So our first stop will be flying out of Ketchikan International Airport. This is the main gateway to Ketchikan. It's just 1 mile west of the downtown Ketchikan, Alaska, on Gravina Island, just west. And of course, since it's not connected by land, you have to take a 7-minute ferry from the water to get to the town. But of course, this airport was opened back in 1973, and it was a combination of effort by local residents to get this place. Of course, destinations include some other Alaskan destinations like Juneau, Seattle, Sitka, and Wrangell. So these are mainly the airports that fly in and out of Ketchikan, Alaska. Pretty cool stuff. And Ketchikan's a really cool city. And speaking of Ketchikan, where we're going to be flying over today, Ketchikan is located. It's right next to the airport, but Ketchikan's a really cool city. And its population is around 8,192 people. It's the 6th most populous city in Alaska, the 13th most populous community when census designated places included. This city is most well known for being a major port town, a lot of cruise ports. It's a big tourism area. Um, but mainly historically, its economy has always been fishing, canneries, tourism, government, and forestry are all big parts of Ketchikan's local economy. Um, Ketchikan is known as the salmon capital of the world, and of course, one of the area's major attractions is Misty Fjords National Monument, as well as Tongass National Forest. But tourism is a pretty big deal in this city, and if you ever got a chance to visit it, Ketchikan's a really cool place. So we're gonna go. And we're out of here. Just fly around to beautiful Ketchikan. But yeah, this is my first time flying in Alaska at MSFS 2024. My first time flying in Alaska. This here is Ketchikan. But yes, if you ever get a chance to go in Alaska, I highly recommend you guys take a bit of a trip down here. You could take a cruise down there. That's what I recommend doing in this part of Alaska. So this here is downtown Ketchikan. And I mean, look at the scenery. All the way up to I think we're gonna climb around 4,000 feet. Give or take, I think 4,000 should be enough for this part of the leg. Yep, we're gonna climb up to 4,000 feet. Or at least, maybe 3,500 feet. But yes, Alaska, really cool place. I really do recommend you guys checking it out. Of course, if you guys want to know more about Ketchikan, you often can find it on most itineraries to Alaska during your Alaska trip. For example, if you go on Princess Cruises, Alaska is one of their most popular itineraries for trips in the summertime. Tons of really cool stuff here in Alaska. Yeah, look at the scenery here. Oh man, Alaska's pretty. Okay, guys, so we're about 3,500 feet above sea level. it needs to be. So, beautiful stuff here in this part of Alaska. Of course, Alaska is very popular with the. But yeah, Alaska is definitely a very cool state that's worth visiting. So we're gonna get ready to prepare for the notes as we head to this part of Alaska, of course. Let's talk a little bit about Alaska and about a brief overview about the U.S. state of Alaska. So Alaska, by the way, is one of the two non-contiguous U.S. states, other being Hawaii, of course. But there's definitely a lot of really cool stuff about Alaska that definitely should be noted. That you guys should probably know when you guys know about Alaska. For one, Alaska is our northernmost, westernmost, and yes, it's also funnily enough, also our easternmost state. Yes, I kid you not. It's both the westernmost and easternmost U.S. state. Yes, it's pretty hilarious. That's because the Aleutian Islands actually crossed it. It borders by the Canadian territories of Yukon and the province of British Columbia to the east, as well as a maritime border with Russia. It is the largest exclave in the world. But of course, Alaska is most well known for being by far the largest U.S. state in the country. To put this perspective, Alaska has more area than the three largest states combined, and the seventh largest in subnational division in the world. It's also the third least populous U.S. state, only trail behind the states of Wyoming. Between the U.S. states of Wyoming is actually the populous state. And I believe the next one on the list is going to population one. I think it's third least populous. I think Wyoming and I think North Dakota is also the third least populous. Oh yeah, it's Vermont. Only Wyoming and Vermont are less populous than Alaska. It also contains the four largest cities in the United States, including the state capital, Juneau. The most populous city in Alaska is, of course, Anchorage, actually, further north. And of course, Alaska also has abundant natural resources, thanks to commercial fishing, natural gas and oil, and more, as well as major economy with tourism, forestry, and more. So yes, Alaska is definitely a very interesting state. So in order to learn a little more about Alaska, of course, we need to talk a bit about its history. So to learn more about Alaska, we need to talk a little bit about its history for a bit. Now, prior to the European settlement, Alaska has had a rich indigenous history to Alaska, even still to this day, but indigenous people have been around this area for over 10,000 years. And apparently many people have evidence of a North American land bridge. But of course, some of the first people that developed this area were the Tlingit people. They developed a bit of a matrilineal kinship system of proper inheritance and descent in much of what is southeast Alaska. They're still very much a part of it today. Also, there were also the Haida people, which were known for their arts. However, all three of these people, as well as others in the Pacific Northwest, experienced smallpox outbreaks from the 18th century through the mid-19th century, with the most devastating epidemics between the 1830s and 1860s, resulting in high fatalities and social disruption. Of course, Now the Europeans actually came in here. But however, they're not the Europeans you expect them. You were thinking that, oh, Alaska was founded by the British or the Spanish or the Portuguese found this area. No, believe it or not, the first European settlers to Alaska were Russian, actually. What? Russian? Yes, Russians. And in fact, Russia has been around part of Alaska since the 17th century. The first European vessel to reach the state was actually St. Gabriel, under the surveyor of MS Gvozdev and assistant navigator Igor Fedorov, August 21st, 1732, during an expedition of Siberian Cossack A.F. Cheskudakov and Russian explorer Dmitry Pavlovsky. After his crew returned to Russia with CR pelts, just to be the finest fur in the world, 12 associations of fur traders began to sail from the shore of Siberia to the Aleutian Islands, and the first permanent European settlement was in 1784. Of course, Spain sent several expeditions to Alaska between 1774 and 1800. However, eventually they no longer had those territories due to the Russians. Of course, later on, the Russian-American Company carried out an expanded colonization program during the early mid-19th century. One of these areas was Sitka, which was actually originally known as New Archangel from 1804 to 1867, was the capital of Russian Alaska, of Russian America. And it still ended up being the capital when it was transferred to the United States. But of course, the most notable part of Alaska history, of course, was in 1867. You see, the Russians were in debt due to all the constant conflicts. Most notably, the Crimean War. With Russia being a lot of debt, Russia has been wanting to sell Alaska. After many people trying to buy the state, eventually in 1867, William H. Seward negotiated the Alaska Purchase. A lot of people called it Seward's Folly because what's there important about Alaska? And he paid it for $7.2 million. Of course, a lot of people say that it was a folly because there was nothing important. Because people thought Alaska ended up being land. Well, let me just tell you a little something about that. It turned out that was not the case at all. Because what it actually turned out to was it ended up actually being one of the biggest bargain deals ever. Because once gold was discovered and silver and gold was discovered, people quickly changed its mind. Because once they discovered gold rush, people became valuable. And of course, not just gold, because later on they discovered oil. And guess what that meant? So it ended up being the case. Of course, Alaska during this time was loosely governed by a military initially, and then administered as a district in 1884, with a governor appointed by the U.S. president. A federal district court was headquartered in Sitka, and for much of Alaska's first decade, Sitka was the only community inhabited by American settlers. But of course, like I said earlier, the gold rushes happened in the 1890s, and they're all over Alaska, and Yukon have brought thousands of miners and settlers to Alaska, and produced over $460 million of mineral production. Of course, Alaska was then officially incorporated as a territory in 1912. And of course, Alaska then moved its capital in 1906 to Juneau, which is a bit further north. Of course, Alaska was also involved in World War II, and was probably the most heavily involved U.S. state in the war in terms of battles, because the Aleutian Islands were captured by the Japanese, and was the only parts of the United States actually been directly occupied. Of course, the Americans had to fight off the Japanese Pacific. Of course, the Aleutian Islands were also very important strategically for the U.S. due to the fact of the Lend-Lease program, sending weapons and supplies over to the Soviets to help fight off the German invasion of the Soviet Union. of course, Alaska statehood then became an issue for many Alaskans post-war and was an important cause for James Wickersham during his tenure as a judge in Alaska. Decades later, the statehood was given momentum in 1946, and eventually, after many years, Alaska finally became a state in 1959 on January 3rd, 1959, making it the 49th state in the country. Of course, one notorious incident that happened during 1964 was the Good Friday earthquake, killing 133 people, destroyed several villages and large portions of communities. It was the fourth most powerful recorded earthquake in history. Fourth most powerful earthquake in recorded history with a magnitude of 9.2, which was 1,000 times more powerful than the 1989 San Francisco earthquake. And the earthquake only lasted for 4 minutes, but it was enough to completely wipe out entire community. Of course, this wasn't the only major thing that happened during the 60s. Apparently, Alaska had its oil boom in 1968 at Prudhoe Bay, and then with the transatlantic pipeline system, led to an oil boom of Alaska. And they also discovered tourism was important. A lot of people like to visit tourism due to its beautiful scenery. And it's become even more important now than it was before. Of course, then they added more conservation of land during this time period with the Alaska Natural Interest Lands Conservation Act. Added lots of parts of national parks and all that. And in 1989, we had the Valdez oil spill, which spilled more than 11 million gallons of crude oil over 1,100 miles of coastline. So, yeah, that is Alaska's history. That is the history of Alaska for you guys. So I hope you guys enjoyed that part of the series. But yeah, guys, look at the scenery out here today in Alaska. This is just gorgeous. Oh, I love flying over Southeast Alaska. I mean, there are not many places in the United States that you get much better scenery than this part of the United States, Southeast Alaska. I've been to this area already twice already, and I've loved every bit of Southeast Alaska. You're not going to find an area much prettier than that. Really not. It's gorgeous. So I do want to ask you guys an important question. I hope you guys had a good weekend so far. Really isn't too much sports stuff going on. I know Louisville City played yesterday. Louisville City won against Lexington again. Louisville City once again has been victorious. They beat Lexington 2-1. They won in the extra minutes. They won in extra time, and they actually won in stoppage times, which was huge. They scored 2 goals in stoppage time in the 97th minute. That was unbelievable. Yeah, big win for Louisville City, and now they're going to prepare for their next regular season game against North Carolina. So, huge game. Of course. Everton were playing in the United States yesterday, and they lost 3-0 to Bournemouth. Ouch. So, yeah, that's not good. Now they got to play the next game against West Ham. Yeah, that's not good at all. To lose 3-0. At least it's a preseason game, but still, that can't be good news for the Toffees. I was also watching Espanol a bit as well. Real RCD Espanol de Barcelona. They beat Southampton for their friendly yesterday. They, let's hope Espanyol remain in La Liga next year for the Paracos. Not really a lot of stuff going on for baseball stuff. I know about next week will be the big Reds Braves game in Bristol Speedway. Big game for that. Look at the scenery, guys. Isn't this just epic? It is just epic scenery. Really cool stuff about Alaska. Speaking about Alaska, let's go into the next part. Before we get to Wrangell, I do want to talk about Alaska a bit more. I want to talk about a little bit about Alaska's geography first. Of course, Alaska, geographically speaking, is by far our nation's largest state with an absolutely massive size. It is around 570,000 square miles, over twice as large as Texas. Um, there are no official defined borders about the different regions of Alaska, but there are 5, 6 regions that the state's broken up to. We have South Central Alaska, which is our most populous region. That's around Anchorage and stuff, but also the Kenai Peninsula. Southeast Alaska, which we're flying here today. This is the one closest to the contiguous 48. And of course, is where non-indigenous settlement was mainly at. Like Ketchikan, Wrangell, Sitka, and Juneau. Then we have the interior, which is the largest region, and much of it is uninhabited wilderness. You can find Gates of the Arctic National Park up in that area, and all that. The North Slope, which is tundra small villages, which you can find like Dead Horse, Prudhoe Bay, all that. Southwest Alaska, which has been sparsely inhabited, and then of course the Aleutian Islands. Those all are what makes part of modern day Alaska. Are all major parts of what Alaska is made of. Of course, Alaska's climate is by far the coldest U.S. state. But now South and Southeast Alaska is actually oceanic climate with cool summers and mild winters, however. But when you get further north, it's much colder up when you go further. Of course, Southeast Alaska is the wettest and warmest part of the states. The highest recorded temperature was actually at 100 degrees Fahrenheit. It's the highest recorded temperature ever in Alaska. It was located in Fort Yukon in 1915. Which actually makes it funny because it's also tied with Hawaii as the lowest high temperature in the United States. However, Alaska's lowest temperature is negative 80 degrees Fahrenheit in Prospect Creek in 1971, which is just 1 degree above the lowest temperature in continental North America in Nag, Yukon. Yes, this place gets cold, very cold. That's why in Alaska you want to go visit it in the summer, not in the winter. That's not a good idea. So we're gonna stop here for just a bit for this leg. We're gonna prepare for the next leg over to Wrangell, of course. We're gonna stop in Wrangell for this leg. So hey, Quartz, good to see you, my dude. I hope it's been a while since I've seen you on my stream, Quartz. I hope you're doing well, my dude. We're doing this is the second last state in this series. We're here in Alaska. We're finally in Southeast Alaska. We're heading to Wrangell for our first stop. We started back in Ketchikan. We're gonna make our way over to Wrangell for the next stop. We're eventually gonna head up to Juneau. So that's where we're going at currently. I hope you're having a great day, my dude. Yes, we only got two. We actually got one more state left on this trip. Hawaii is our last state we're going to be visiting. Oh, yes, Alaska is absolutely gorgeous. Highly recommend. Anyone who hasn't been to Alaska should check it out once. There's just a lot to do. There's a lot of natural beauty in this state to explore. You could go on a boat. My favorite, though, is you take the float plane. That's what I did back in Juneau last year, was the float plane. So, really great. But yeah, we only got one last state. Hawaii's the last state. And I'm also going to do a bonus stream on Washington, D.C. because it is our nation's capital, and I want to go over our nation's capital. Which, while it isn't a state, I still want to cover it because there also have been talks of making it the 51st state. So I thought, why not explore Washington, D.C. for a bit? It is our nation's capital. So, but yeah, next week will be Hawaii and Washington next week. For Hawaii, of course, this will be our last stream on part 5. But it will be from Hilo. It would be from Hilo over to Kona. Hilo to Kona. Then we're going to go from Kona over to it would be from Kona over to Maui. Then Maui over to Ford Island. And then finally over to Lihu, over to Kauai Island. But yeah, we're going to explore all 4 Hawaiian islands, major Hawaiian islands on one. And then for the bonus stream, we're going to be going from Boston over to New York to Lancaster, and then Lancaster over to DC. Yes, we're going to explore all of the United States. And that way we wrap up everything covered about our 50 states. Yeah, I'm very excited to get... Oh, that's sad to hear about that. I really do hope you get to see Alaska Quartz. It is a great... At least we could fly it over in the sim. So, we're going to be arriving to Wrangell very shortly. We're heading to Wrangell. So Wrangell will be our very first stop of this trip. Yeah, look at the people on the left. You can see Alaska's just... Of course, it's still not photogrammetry really well with the satellite data, but it's still beautiful, though. Oh, I know, that sucks. I hope you do one day. I really do. So we're going to be heading to Wrangell. You're welcome, Court. I just wanted... here it is, guys. We're going to head to Wrangell first. Wrangell is a borough in Alaska, population 2,127 people. It was incorporated as a borough in 2008. It was previously a city named after its Tlingit name, means little lake in the native language. Wrangell, of course, is pretty well notable for being. It was founded by the Russians in 1811, and it was actually one of the oldest non-native settlements in the state. And of course, its main primary industry is fishing. Commercial fishing fleet often does a lot of services, taking tourists into the wilderness to British Columbia. But of course, Wrangell's a really interesting city as well, with a rich fishing history, but also with forestry too. Really neat stuff. Also, by the way, if you ever wanted to do something in Alaska for aviation, you could take the Alaska Milk Run, which basically from Alaska Airlines goes from Seattle over to Ketchikan, then you fly over to Wrangell, Petersburg, Sitka, Juneau, and I think that's where, and I think you eventually go to Yakutat, and then you go to Anchorage. But that'd be the Alaska Milk Run. But it's really cool though, fly that part of Alaska with the airlines. I want to try that one day in 2024, on my own, of course, but I would love to try to do that. So we're going to be landing on runway 28. So that's where we're going to be landing here today. Alaska. And so here, guys, we're about to enter Wrangell. Here it is, guys. We're going to be, here's Wrangell down below, as I believe Wrangell's just going to go ahead and turn off our autopilot for right now and make the descent back into the airport. Okay. Here we go. This. Ah, we have Flying Teapot in the DC3. I wonder he's flying alongside with us today, too. But yeah, we have someone else wanting to fly with us in Wrangle. Go. First stop. Here we go. So we're going to stop here for a bit. I got to take a quick bob break. I'll be right back, and we'll prepare for the next leg up. Yeah, there was a bot. So we'll stop here for a minute. I'm going to go take a quick bob break, and I'll be right back. Alright guys, I'm back. I hope you guys got a bit of something to drink and all that. We're going to prepare for the next leg. We're going to fly over to Sitka, which will be our next leg of a trip in Sitka, Alaska's first capital. And our heading is 7th. Go ahead and get her going. Let's take off here in beautiful Alaska. Here we go, guys. Hey Speedy, good to see you, my dude. I hope you're having a good day yourself. Welcome into my dude. We're in Alaska. We're in our second to last state of our series. So we just took off from Wrangell and we're gonna head our way over to beautiful Sitka. I'm doing great myself. I appreciate it. So we're gonna be Alaska. Oh, thank you for giving a shout out to Speedy's channel, Typhon. Definitely appreciate it. So of course, as we fly over to Sitka, let's go ahead and talk about our next part of our topic. Let's talk about Alaska's wildlife, of course. Let me get... Bingo, wildlife. Of course, a lot of people love to visit Alaska for its wildlife. And it makes complete sense because Alaska is one of our most preserved nature areas in the country. It's both diverse and abundant, provide habitat for fish, mammals, reptiles, and birds. And of course, Alaska contains 7% of North America's brown bear population, and the majority of grizzly bears, as well as black bears, and even the mighty Kodiak, which are a subspecies of the brown bear, and it's the largest species of brown bear in the world. In the winter, you can find the polar bears, the largest bear species in the world. Other mammals also include moose, caribou, bison, wolves, wolverines, member of the weasel family, foxes, otters, and beavers. Fish species are also quite extensive, like salmon, raylings, char, rainbow lake trout, northern pike, halibut, pollock, and burbot. And of course, Alaska is also home to marine species, including that of shrimp, lobster, and more. And of course, birds, you can find bald eagles, the national bird. You can find the bald eagle, owls, including the snow owl, falcons, ravens, ducks, geese, swan, and passerine. Marine mammals like sea lions, seals, and whales, also found here, up here in Alaska. Of course, the picture here represents at Katmai National Park about brown bears, and these guys are the top predators in Alaska. They eat, and they're very omnivorous. Meaning brown bears can eat all sorts of stuff. They can, of course, most of their diet is actually from vegetable matter, mainly berries, grasses, flowers, acorns, and pine cones. And they can even eat tough foods like roots, shoots. Of course, in terms of animal matter, it can actually eat insects, larvae, and grubs, including beehives, as well as ops. And of course, they can eat up to as big as moose, Even mooses are a part of the menu. Moose, bison, elk are all part of the larger animal dinners. But of course, during the fall season, they absolutely gorge on salmon, and that is something that's very well known in Alaska. Is they eat a lot of salmon um during spawning salmon, and that's how brown bears in Alaska get so fat. They literally just catch and eat salmon, which is basically pretty easy supply of food. They just catch the salmon. Pretty cool stuff. Really cool stuff about animals. Of course, polar bears, fun enough, which is actually the largest bear you can find in Alaska. They are hyper carnivores. They only eat meat compared to that of other bears. But the polar bears mainly eat seals due to their energy-rich blubber. But however, do not be surprised if bears will actually prey on whale species. Yes, belugas and narwhals are also on the menu for polar bears, as well as reindeer, birds, eggs, and more. So, yes. Crazy stuff. There's a lot, and of course, orcas are very much a part of the sea, and they're basically the apex part of the sea. So, pretty cool stuff about Alaska's um, nature. Of course, one big part about Alaska nowadays has been the economy of Alaska, and it's been a big part in recent years. Mainly, it's been growing ever since. In 2018, the gross state product was 55 billion US dollars, which is 48 in the U.S. in per capita income. In the United States in total product, however, its per capita income is 73,000, which is actually among the highest in the U.S. And it has the fifth largest number of millionaires per capita in the United States, with 6.7%. The main parts of the economy that dominate are oil and gas, with more than 80% of the revenues from the industries. Of course, its main exports are seafood. The main primary export is seafood. Agriculture actually represents a small fraction of very minute fraction of the Alaskan economy due to the fact it's cold. Expected to be. And main employment is mainly government and industries are the main parts of its main employment, as well as military bases. Alaska's got quite a few of those. That's basically the main part about Alaska's economy for a bit. Look at the scenery, guys. Holy heck, look at the scenery here. But look at the state of this, guys. Alaska's scenery, man. Oh, what a pretty U.S. state. You wonder why I like visiting Alaska so much. So, pretty cool stuff here in this part of Alaska. The scenery is just so. We're going to be heading over to more about Wrangell stuff. We're going to head more to Sitka. Let's look at more notes. So Alaska, of course, has its largest sector is the energy sector. And Alaska itself has vast energy resources, though oil reserves have largely been depleted, as they are mainly found in the Alaska North Slope. However, Alaska has fallen now to fourth place in oil production after Texas, North Dakota, and California. That being said, its North Slope is still the second highest yielding oil field in the United States, producing around 400,000 barrels of oil per day. And of course, much of this oil is transported along the transatlantic pipeline, transport and published to 2.1 million barrels of oil per day, more than any other pipeline in the United States. Also, they found substantial coal deposits in the Bitonis coal basin. There's around 85.4 trillion cubic feet of coal still left to be discovered. Actually, undiscovered, technically recoverable gas from natural gas height. Of course, it's Alaska depends on increasingly expensive diesel fuel for heating, transportation, electric power, and light. Although wind and hydroelectric power are abundant and under development, proposals for those systems were judged uneconomical. So as a result, they haven't had a lot of alternative stuff just yet. But nowadays, tourism's now the biggest sector, and it's actually moving more and more into tourism nowadays. Which isn't surprising considering tourism is one of the other big industries in the state. In fact, it's actually Alaska is the second largest private sector employer in Alaska. Tourism, it provides 1 in 8 Alaskan jobs. Also, 2 million visitors visit Alaska a year, and 2.42 billion in labor income. Nearly half of all visitors arrive through the cruise industry, including that of Carnival, Celebrity, Disney, Holland America, Norwegian, Princess, and Royal Caribbean. And guess what a lot of... Oh crap, the engine. Oh, that was not good. Yeah, I forgot one issue with this thing. The Beaver does not have much of a fuel tank. Does not have much range. I forgot to check that. But of course, many people in Alaska sail through this part. Most cruise ships will sail through this part of Alaska during the summertime. Others also ride via Ted Stevens Anchorage Airport, driving along the Alaska Highway. And of course, visitors love going to Alaska because of its natural and characteristics of the landscape, wildlife, and culture. And those include sightseeing tours, whale watching, glacier viewing, sightseeing, wildlife viewing, hiking, kayaking, and fishing. In fact, fishing alone generates over $650 million US by non-residents. And of course, the national park system. In fact, Alaska has a lot of national parks, 8 of them, in fact. The second most of any U.S. state behind California. And that alone drives over 2 million people to visit Alaska's national parks. Yes, Alaska definitely has a lot of that going. That's where we're going here today. Beautiful part of Alaska. So we're actually right here in Tongass National Forest. Um, so interesting fun fact about the Tongass National Forest here in Alaska. This is actually the largest national forest in the United States. This national forest extends from where we're at currently here all the way up to the end of Glacier Bay National Park area. It is actually by far the largest national forest, larger than 10 entire U.S. states, at about 16.7 million acres. So yeah, this is all one national forest. Absolutely enormous. Pretty enormous. Hey, Flying Dive, good to see you, my dude. I hope you're doing well. Happy Sunday. I hope you had a great weekend so far. So we're mainly flying up to that high. Oh, nice! You're working on a big work project. Oh, nice! I got you got that done. I'm still working on something for my own personal stuff too. I hope we get to do something. I'm about to end this 50 states, 50 streams. Next week is going to be the final two streams of the series. The last U.S. state, Hawaii, and our nation's capital. I'll be completely done with the series. So, having to get that series worked on and done. So, looking forward to that. So we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit more about Alaska as we get origin here. One of the really cool things about Alaska's fun facts, and one of the really cool about our state, is of course the cruises and stuff. I do those quite a bit. So mainly on a Alaska cruise. The main itineraries most people visit on their Alaska trip. The main places many people go is Southeast Alaska, and the reason being is that it's most accessible by ship. It's the easiest to get to for about 7 to 14. But if you go for a 9-day Alaskan trip, for example, let's say you're going to Norwegian and you want to go on a 9-day Alaska trip. Well, in that case, you go to Ketchikan, Juneau, Skagway, Icy Street Point, and then you also have a stop in British Columbia in Victoria, for example. That would be your Alaska vacation. You got tons of excursions in um, um, and of course you got tons of excursions and stuff too. So I'm just trying to get some stuff loaded. You can do short excursions, and then you can check out all the different excursions for the trip. Example, let's say you want to go to, we're going to head to Sitka. So you guys want to go to Sitka, you can do that. You could do, they got excursions for a wildlife cruise. You could look around for Alaska wildlife, like otters and even whales. There's kayaking, of course. You can do kayaking for nature, salmon fishing. You can take a local hike through the local forest and scenery. They got a cultural experience with the Tlingit people. Check out their culture and stuff. But yeah, Sitka's a beautiful city, and I've been there. It's an absolutely gorgeous city. It was one of my favorite places. But I mean, there's so many really cool places you can explore. Skagway, which we're not going to be visiting on the trip, by the way. Skagway. They got gold because it was a big part of the gold rush. Skagway actually has a lot of gold digging. You can take the Klondike Summit. You can go up the summit through the White Pass Railroad. Of course, mushers camps with sled dogs like they did back in much part of Alaska. You got some really cool and interesting areas here too. Tons of different experiences. Hey, Scott, come in. Good to see you. I'm not that attractive, you know. Super super awesome Typhon. Oh, Sky. Oh, always has the humor. Good to have you here, Sky Command. Yeah, Alaska. Absolutely cool U.S. state we're flying over. We're heading to Sitka for our second stop. We actually have Flying Teapot with us in the free, but the scenery of Alaska is just breathtaking. Gorgeous. But so so many really cool areas all across Canada. It's absolutely. Yeah, I want to go back to Alaska again at some point, but this time, instead of a southeast Alaska, I wanted to go more into inland. I want to explore Anchorage, Ollie, Fairbanks. Maybe Wrangell National Park would be really cool to explore. Wrangell would be amazing to explore. Wrangell would be amazing. Like I said, Alaska's got a lot of national parks. I would love to explore them. That's where we're going out here today. So we're going to be hitting to Sitka pretty shortly. Sitka definitely a really cool historic city here in this part of Alaska. But I'm really excited though. I really want to do a national park thing. That's the one thing I want to do when I get back to Alaska, is go do the national park. Is a national park tour. I want to tour the national parks. But yeah, they got an excursion thing for a national park thing, but it's expensive, like $26,000. But they'll take you to all 8 of Alaska's national parks: Glacier Bay, Lake Clark. You actually go from Glacier Bay, Katmai, Seward and Kenai Fjords, Lake Clark, Wrangell, the biggest national park in the country, by the way, Denali, then Quebec Valley and Gates of the Arctic, the last 2, the least visited parks in the country. But yeah, a lot of people don't know this about the natural scenery, but yeah, Alaska has 8 national parks, by the way, which is the second most of all of the U.S. states behind California. Alaska is unique because it's home to the biggest national park of Wrangell St. Elias, which, fun fact, it's the size of Switzerland. Yes, it's bigger than Switzerland. It's bigger than the entire country. It's actually, I'm not kidding, it's actually as big as it is back. scenery is just jaw-dropping. We're just about, let's see how far we are left to go from. I'm gonna look at the compass road. Okay, we're about 35 nautical miles out from Sitka. I do appreciate you guys for checking this out. This is Baranof Island we're going to be flying to. This is where Sitka's at. So a bit of information about Sitka, Alaska. Because we're actually going to head there. Sitka, actually Alaska's original capital. It was in the Unified State Borough of Southeast Alaska. It was actually originally ruled from the Russians from 1799 to 1867. It's located in the west side of Baranof Island, in the south half of Chickenoff Island, here in the Alexander Archipelago. Population is about 8,500, making it the fifth most populous city in the state. And it's actually the largest city by total area of any U.S. city with over 2,800 square miles. The whole area is 4,800 square miles. Yeah, so it is the largest city by land area in the country, is Sitka. But of course, it was the old capital of Alaska from 1867 to from 1799 to 1906 was the capital of Alaska. Of course, historically, Alaska's this part was dominated by forestry, a big part of its economy. It was mainly with forestry. And of course, fish canning and gold mining were part of the initial growth, but nowadays it's most well known for tourism, especially cruise ships. Though they had a referendum that restricted cruise ship tourism. But eventually they voted against all. But there's some really cool attractions here in this city. Of course, they celebrate Alaska Day every October 18th. They celebrate Alaska Day. And Sitka holds the annual festival, which is a week-long event that reenacts the ceremony of the signing of the Alaska Purchase. But there's tons of attractions here. They include the Alaska Raptor Center for rehabilitating birds of prey, Baranof Castle Hill, where you can find Baranof Castle. I've been up there. The Fortress of the Bear, which is a bear refuge here. They got the old Russian bishop's house. They got, and of course, the most famous building in the city, St. Michael's Cathedral, the earliest Orthodox cathedral in the New World. I would have loved to enter into St. Michael's, but it was closed during that time, sadly. They got the Historical Museum in Sitka, and of course, they also have Sitka National Historic Park. Are some of the really cool activities. Sitka has been involved in pop culture. Mainly, it's been featured in Bizarre Foods. It was also featured quite a few other bits of media. So Sitka definitely a really cool state to visit. Here it is, guys, Sitka. We'll see as well. There's Baranov Island. So Baranov Island, fun enough, I don't have the notes for it, but from what I know, Baranov Island is actually an area of 1,600 square miles, which is actually larger than the U.S. state of Rhode Island, and it measures 105 miles by 30 miles at the longest point and western point, respectively, and its shoreline 617 miles. It's actually Alaska's 8th largest island by area in the state, and it's actually the 10th largest island in the United States. Yes, this is actually a pretty big island. So yes, this island we're actually flying over is larger than Rhode Island. It's bigger than the U.S. state, and it is absolutely gorgeous. We're gonna land down. Ooh. So our next stop, of course, is going to be Sitka Rocky Gutierrez Airport. Papa Alpha Sierra, India will be our next stop. This airport's located west of Sitka. It's named after the former mayor, Rocky Gutierrez, with a single terminal and jetway operated by Alaska Airlines. It's located on a causeway that juts off Japonski Island. This airport is pretty unique as some of the safety hazards include ocean waves washing to the runway during high storms, high winds due to its exposed location, and large flocks of birds that live in the airports. And due to it, it's actually ranked as one of the top approaches for land experiences in the world. And it mainly flies to destinations across Alaska, like Juneau, PAKT-PAWG, Ketchikan. Seattle occasionally flies to Seattle, Washington, but mainly flies to a lot of Alaska destinations. And they mainly operate the 737 family of planes. Operates in and out of this airport. I'm going to go ahead and descend. Descend a little slowly. Slow it down. Slowly make our way down to 6. So we're going to make our way to 6. We're going to go ahead and descend down to 2,000 feet. Look at all of this, guys. Look at the scenery. It's absolutely. Here we go, guys. This is Sitka, by the way. We're about to arrive in beautiful Sitka. The airport arrival. So I want to ask you guys, if you guys are enjoying this stream and want to support the channel, we fly 2 days a week, Fridays and Sundays here on Twitch. Soon, in 2 weeks, we'll be starting 2 brand new series. First will probably last us all the way to 2028, probably. It'll be the All Country series on MSFS. We'll fly to every single major country in the world. Here on Fridays, and then on Sundays will be our National Park series. It might be get done by about next year or so. We'll be doing the National Park series. So we'll explore all 60 of the U.S. national parks, from Yellowstone over to Grand Canyon to Big Bend and much, much more. But very excited to get that series finally up and going. So here it is, guys. Sitka. So this here is the beautiful city of Sitka, Alaska. Yes. Remember, I'm going to be doing this every Friday, so, and it's going to be over about 290 to 200 countries. So, put that in minus 52, and it will take about 3 or 4 years. Oh, yes. He will be taken here for quite a long time. I wanted a longer lasting series than some of the ones I've done previously. You guys are landing for the day. Let's park here. Man, what a beautiful stop. What a gorgeous picture. What a beautiful stop. We'll stop here for just a minute if you guys want to join alongside us. We'll stop here for yes, Typhon. I mean, think about it. 3 days, 1 week a year, and that's not even count all the vacation days. Sometimes I have to be off for vacation. I mean, I'm serious on this one. Very serious. Wait here for a bit. So our last leg, guys, if you want to keep track of this, we're going to be heading over to beautiful Juneau, a city I've been to quite a few times on my trips. So we get ready very shortly for the flight over to Juneau, Alaska. Now, thankfully the Beaver doesn't need much of runway. Go! Last leg. Up we go. And here's Sitka. Look how beautiful this place is. Sitka's a gorgeous city. Yeah, we're just about 85 nautical miles out from our last stop in Juneau, Alaska. Juneau would be our last stop. So we only got a couple more slides left to go on this stream. But man, we're just blowing right through this part of Alaska, man. And you guys wonder why I love flying in this country. Because it really is beautiful. So as we're climbing to 8,000 feet, let's go talk about some of the other slides here. First, it's been Alaska's culture. Compared to many other states, Alaska's got a lot more indigenous influence compared to many other cultures because the indigenous people actually still had some bit of influence here. But one of its most popular events is held every year, the Iditarod. It's been held every single year. In Juneau has been the Iditarod racing competition. Has been held nearly every year from Anchorage to Nome. As well as the World Ice Championships in Fairbanks, the Blueberry Festival and Alaska Hummingbird Festival in Ketchikan, Sitka Whale Fest, the Sitka River Garnet Fest in Wrangell. Of course, the Sitka River brings a lot of concentration of bald eagles in the world to do some sightseeing. And the Alaska Native Heritage Center in Anchorage celebrates the rich heritage of its 11 different cultural groups to allow cultural exchanges of all people and improve the self-esteem among the Native Alaskans, as well as its own Native Arts Foundation for Native art. In terms of music, Alaska has a surprising music history, including those of the traditional natives as well as later immigrants from Russia and Europe. Some of these musicians include the singer Jewel, the alute flautist Mary Youngblood, folk singer-songwriter Libby Roderick, Christian music songwriter Lincoln Brewster, and more. There's also multiple music festivals here, including the Alaska Folk Festival, the Fairbanks Summer Arts Festival, the Anchorage Folk Festival, and more. The official state flag, by the way, is Alaska's flag, which was adopted back in 1955. And has been featured in quite a few films this time. Alaska doesn't have any major league sports teams, obviously, but they mainly have college sports, mainly the University of Alaska. Okay, for transportation, however, Alaska's unique terrain and stuff creates a really unique transportation challenges. One is that Alaska has few road connections. The state's road system is only just in the small area of the state linking the central population centers of Alaska, Anchorage, and Fairbanks. However, our state capital, funnily enough, is not even accessible by road. So you even have to take the ferry or you have to fly over to it, which spurs debates over decades about moving the capital city to one on the road system. Of course, interstates only have about 1,000 miles of interstate through Alaska. And of course, there isn't a lot of connection on land. Rail has also been around for about since 1950 with the Alaska Railroad, bringing shipping lanes on the North Pacific with interior Alaska. Such. And of course, the railroad played a big role in its development, moving freight and transporting natural resources. Of course, in southeast Alaska, in Skagway, you can find the White Pass Yukon route, which is now mainly used by tourists. But it was pretty big back in the day, transporting a lot of goods up across the White Pass summit and more. But the big part of Alaska transportation has been the ferry system. Since there's not much road access, a lot of access came from ferry system. The Alaska Marine Highway serves the southeast Gulf Coast and Alaska Peninsula. And it also operates in Washington and British Columbia as well. And of course, cruise ships often come up here, but probably the most important transportation is air transportation. Is probably the most important in Alaska because the air allows Alaska to develop its bush services, which is an Alaska novelty. And while there's many there's only a few big airports like in Anchorage and Fairbanks. Many smaller communities rely on these bush air services, with small community airlines, with bush and general aviation services. And of course, seaplanes are also really important here in Alaska too. Mainly in the southeast portion of Alaska has tons of seaplane bases. Ketchikan, Juneau, Petersburg, Sitka, all rely on seaplanes. In fact, Lake Hood is the world's busiest seaplane base. And lastly, Alaska has the most pilots per capita of any U.S. state. So that's pretty important to know. So that is Alaska for you guys. Let's go over some fun facts about our state. The last frontier, it's call it. You know the small state, Rhode Island, right? Well, apparently you could fit Rhode Island to Alaska 425 times into Alaska. You can also find 17 of the 20 highest peaks in the United States, all in Alaska. And crazy yet, in 1910, an unnamed draftsman created the state seal, which consists of a rising sun shining on forests, lakes, and fishing boats. It was founded by a draftsman in 1910. In 1926, a 13-year-old Benny Benson from Conneaut, Alaska, actually designed the state flag, which was used here today. And the state flag of Alaska is depicted by Ursa Major, which symbolizes the bear, and the Big Dipper, all big parts of Alaska's flag. But it is a really cool one. It's really one of the most unique flags here in Alaska. Really, really cool. It's one of the best flags in the United States. Yeah, 13-year-old designed the flag, but it's a really cool flag. It's one of our nation's most unique ones. The name Alaska actually comes from the Eskimo word Alashkak, meaning great lands or peninsula. And finally, in 1912, Nova erupted volcano erupted, and what created and shook the entire area that now makes Katmai National Park. And we might even fly over the volcano during the National Park series. Pretty cool, huh? So yeah, that is our National Park series. And with Alaska being a newer U.S. state, there isn't very many famous people, but I found at least a few of them. Some of the famous people include Russian trader public official Alexander Baranov, named Baranov Island, is named after him. Then you have Margaret Elizabeth Bell, famous author, the state flag designer of the state flag, Benny Benson from Chignik. Vitus Bering, explorer from Denmark, who the Bering Sea was actually named after, by the way. William A. Egan, the first state governor of Alaska. Pioneer pilot Carl Ben Ilsen. Henry E. Gruning, political leader. Joe Juneau, Juneau's namesake. Austin Lathrop, industrialist. And Sidney Lawrence, notable painter. These are some of the well-known people who have been involved in Alaska. Let's check our fuel situation. I just switched to the rear tank and empty. we got one last state, full state, before we head on to the bonus streams. So I can't believe we're gonna end this series, guys. If you guys want to check out the VODs for these games, here's the link to them. You guys can check out the VODs and check them all out here. Um, that is, this is just absolute. It actually dropped down a little bit. Oh yeah. So if you want to actually know about Alaska itself, want to know more about Alaska as a state, one interesting fact about Alaska that I think some people kind of get lost is that Alaska only has a population of 740,000 people live in Alaska. Which is pretty crazy. 740,000 people. Of all those 740,000 people that live in Alaska currently, the vast majority of those people live in Anchorage, which is actually home to around 40% of all Alaska people live in Anchorage. So about more than half of all the people live in the Anchorage metro area. So they either live in Anchorage or they live in Fairbanks, which is two big cities in Alaska. But yeah, Alaska's absolutely gorgeous. Part of this. So we only got a couple more stream left to go. So we're about to head to Juneau. We're just about 43 nautical miles out of Juneau, Alaska. But it's time we finally talk about Alaska's state capital, Juneau. This is actually the capital of Alaska on the Gastineau Channel. It was named the capital in 1906 when the District of Alaska moved from Sitka over to Juneau, to a more inland location. In 1970, it merged with the city of Douglas to form the Greater Juneau Borough, which forms it the second largest municipality in the U.S. by land area. Yes, Juneau as a city is larger than both Rhode Island and Delaware. Entire U.S. states are still smaller in land area than Juneau. Juneau's entire population is around 32,000 people, which is the third most populous city behind Anchorage and Fairbanks. But it is actually our nation's sixth least populous capital. And believe it or not, that population is increased by almost double when cruise ships come around during the times of between May and September. The city was named after the gold prospector Joe Juneau. It was originally called Rockwell and then Harrisburg, but now it's changed to Juneau. And it's very unique among state capitals. It's only one of two state capitals in the country that have no roads connecting it to the rest of the state or the contiguous 48. Only Honolulu, which we will be flying over on next Friday, is the only other capital. And it's due to the fact that Juneau has extremely rugged terrain. So it's actually by de facto an island city in terms of transportation. They all have to come in by plane or boat. And of course, the capital city was built in 1931. Yes. Juneau is and it hosts an annual folk festival, art, jazz, and classical music festival, and more. Are some of the other cultural events here in Juneau. Of course, there has been talks about moving the capital for decades, due to the fact that most people don't even live around the Juneau area; they live all the way in the Anchorage area. Of course, this has been around for decades. Pretty cool stuff. Of course, our last stop is Juneau International Airport. This is our last stop. It's the main air gateway over to Juneau International Airport. And it's the main gateway to Juneau. Juneau International is going to be our last stop. And it's the main airport of Juneau. It's one of Alaska's busiest airports. And basically, it's the only real gateway into the city, actually. Both a airport and a base located 7 nautical miles northwest of Juneau. and it's a regional hub for all sorts of air travel, from bush carriers to major U.S. carriers like Alaska. And the airport was used in World War II by the U.S. Army Air Force as a transport link between bases in Aleutians and airfields in the mainland U.S., as well as by the Air Transport Command for the Lend-Lease program. Of course, for Juneau, it's mainly has a lot of historical airline services, and one of the first was Pan Am operating DC-4s from Seattle to Juneau twice a week. Of course, the Jetta came with the 707, with Pan Am operating 707s and later 720s, and then Alaska Airlines came in this area. Of course, they also operate GA planes out of it, like Convair GA240s, Twin Otters, Grumman Gooses, and more. But it mainly operates flights all across Alaska, like Anchorage, Ketchikan, Petersburg, Seattle, Yakutat. Seattle's not Alaska, but they fly around the Northwest. Skagway, Davos, Haines, and more. They fly a lot of stuff in and around this area of Alaska. But yeah, that's our last slide for the stream. So let's go ahead and get on our way to Juneau. I'm going to go ahead and go down to 1,000 feet. Absolutely gorgeous state. We're going to fly up, but look at this area. It's gorgeous. Because I could not have enough of this beautiful scenery for the land. Makes me excited for visiting Norway when we get to that part in the all countries. Here we go, guys. Make our way down to Juneau. So a little bit to the right. Now during my time in Alaska, I did the seaplane flights, and we actually took off from Juneau Harbor. We went off through this area, and we turned a little bit to the left. We went through Taku Inlet, and we made our way through the 5 glaciers and stuff, which was super cool. I have videos and pictures of it in my Discord, by the way, if you guys want to check that out. It should be under the IRL travel page. here we are, guys. We're going to turn left. It was a little early for me. I missed the turn. Wow. Okay, had a stutter. Here we go, guys. We're going to be about to arrive in Juneau. So here it is, guys. Juneau. Here it is, guys. Beautiful Juneau. There is Juneau. This here is Juneau, Alaska, guys. Welcome to the state capital. Capitol buildings around this area here. Yeah, the Beaver's a great aircraft for this part. If I had a float plane on me today, I was thinking about taking that. I was going to land in Juneau Harbor. Wrap everything up. I mean, flying to the airport is still pretty nice too. See Minhall Glacier on the way. Guys, thank you all so much for joining me on this Alaska trip. We'll be going back to our 50-state services on next Friday. So I hope you guys enjoy this beautiful something. Here it is, guys. Welcome to Juneau International, guys. We'll be here for one last. Here we go. And that's it. And that's it, everyone. We made it to Juneau International Airport, guys. I hope you had a great time here as much as I have. Juneau's absolutely gorgeous. It's a beautiful U.S. state. So, guys, thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. We'll be back on next Friday. We'll cover the last U.S. state, the beautiful U.S. state on Honolulu. So we're gonna go say hello to I think we're gonna say hello over to NorCali today. We're gonna raid him. He's doing another bush thing, so I think this would be perfect. So stick around for the raid. I hope you have a great time and see you guys in Hilo. Goodbye, everyone. See you soon.